Welcome back to the podcast with me, your host, Pete Tigers. 16th of June has passed, and I'm sure you're like me in getting excited about catching some grayling and perhaps some other coarse fish too. It only seemed right that my guest today is the new chair of the Grayling Society. We'll be talking about fishing, plus a whole lot more too. I'm pleased to be joined today by Marnie Lovejoy. Marnie, it's wonderful to have you along to the podcast. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. Thank you very much for having me. I've just been on the river actually this morning, and I intend to go back after our quick conversation.
That sounds very, very civilised. Does that mean you live relatively close?
Well, I'm really lucky. I live in Hampshire and I'm very close to some of the wonderful chalk streams we've got. So I've been on the Itchin very early this morning, and I will obviously do this podcast with you, do some work, and then I tend to go back in the evening, do some more fishing.
And how have you found your season so far from a trout perspective, and perhaps now that it's underway, a grayling perspective too?
Yeah, it all is going well so far. Beginning of the season, I didn't get out as much as I would like to. Work was quite busy, but I think I caught up a little bit, and I caught my third grayling this morning, so it's all going well.
Pleased to hear that. And you're on those crystal clear waters. Does that mean that you're stalking individual fish?
Yes, well, both. Sometimes I sight fish them if there is an opportunity. There are also some deeper pools in there where sight fishing is not necessarily possible. But yeah, a bit of both. I love sight fishing, though. It's so exciting.
Absolutely, I'm with you. And I often say that when I get to glance across those chalk streams, the ability to see those fish is something very, very special. Tell me, on those rivers, do you have many grayling that are rising fish, or does it tend to be a nymph type approach to them?
So that's just my experience. Smaller grayling tend to rise to a fly reasonably easily. The bigger ones, that they are more bottom feeders, so that's more a nymphing job.
And I always find I'm terrible at hooking, certainly the grayling down here on the X system and some of the other places. Have you ever had issues trying to hook rising grayling? Because I think about the shape of the mouth and everything else, or is that when they commit, they commit?
Well, yeah, that's a good question, actually. So where I fish them, they tend to sit in slightly faster water. So if they commit, you do tend to hook them. I find not unhooking them, but getting them back can sometimes be quite tricky because they are very jerky and wriggly, aren't they, compared to a trout? Which is, part of their fantastic character, I suppose.
Yes, I know when I'm nymph fishing over the winter that if you catch a small one on the dropper, it can be dropper replacement time at times, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And sometimes you think you have a real big fish on the line, but it's not that big in the end.
Yeah. So what took you to Hampshire?
Well, I'm from Switzerland originally. I came to England about 15 years ago for personal reasons, and I never left. And I've always been I've been in Surrey for a few months, but then I've always been in Hampshire. It's a beautiful part of England.
It certainly is. And from a fishing perspective over there, were you doing much fishing over there? And perhaps can you tell us a little bit about it?
So in Switzerland, I haven't really fished at all. There are two experiences of fishing I had as a child. So we always went on holiday to the Italian-speaking part of Switzerland. And you have these alpine rivers there where we went in the summer, so we tend to go there and, for sunbathing, have a swim in them. But we had a couple of old rods, floating rods, not fly rods, from our granddad. And we I remember you had to go to the tourist office to get your fishing license. And with your fishing license, you got a little tub of maggots and off you went fishing. Well, you thought you were fishing. We weren't really fishing. We had no idea what we were doing. But we very occasionally hooked small silvery fish, and I can't even tell you what fish that would have been. So that was the first exposure. And where I grew up, our neighbor, he was a Japanese man who was a very keen fly fisher, who tied his own flies as well. So I always saw him, almost in kind of a meditative state, tying flies. And he went on the River Doo in the Jura Mountains, and he fished for grayling, actually. So my first exposure to grayling was when he came home. He prepared sashimi, so raw fish, for us, brought it over beautifully presented. So my first exposure to grayling is actually to eat it raw. But then, I I didn't start fishing or fly fishing until much, much later in life. I was always outdoorsy. I always had horses, dogs. I went to the woods, went mushroom hunting, all of that. So I was always living in and with nature, if you will. But I came to fly fishing only a few years ago. I always thought it looks so graceful. I want to have a go. And then I got a lesson a few years ago with Jilly Bate, who you might know. And I was just instantly hooked. I just could not stop doing it. I couldn't stop trying to learn everything about it. So in my first year of fly fishing, I think I fished 11 rivers. So I'm absolutely addicted of it.
So, do you think that was just an extension of your love of the outdoors, that when you picked up that fly rod and hit all these sorts of different rivers, do you think it just fitted in with the lifestyle that you like to lead already?
So that's actually a really good question. And I ask myself the same question. So what makes fishing so fantastic, or fly fishing in particular for me? And I haven't completely nailed it yet, but I think there are three different elements to it. So I think one is when you go to a river, it never looks the same twice. It's always changing. So the light is changing, the water is changing, you have different insects, the fish are doing something different. And that constant flow is for me a place where I can reset. So for some reason, when you stand in a river, you have that flowing water around you. It is where you can kind of get rid of, all the noise and maybe not the problems. You will still have the problems of your everyday life when you come home, but they feel slightly easier. So I think that is one thing. And the second thing is what you mentioned. You are not just with nature if you're in a river, you are absolutely in it. And suddenly everything comes closer. That's how I experience it anyway. So suddenly the birds come closer to you, the insects land on you. And when you catch a fish, you get that glimpse into a kind of a hidden world, which you don't usually see. So it's a really special experience. And I think that the last element, and maybe the most important one, is fishing has a lot to do with hope. Every cast you have the hope that this is the cast, or every drift you have the expectation that something is going to happen. And I do think that sense of hope kind of doesn't leave you when you're on a river. And I think that's what makes it so addictive. So it is something very optimistic, but I'm still trying to figure out why I'm so obsessed with it. But I think these elements play a part.
That's a beautiful answer. I like that very, very much. And you talked about Jilly, who's a friend of the podcast. She's been on a number of times. And you said how graceful fly fishing looked to you. But of course, when we're learning something new for the first time, it's not always as graceful. How did you pick up the casting aspect of it? Was it relatively straightforward for you, or did it take a little bit of time? How did you find that?
Yeah, no, it's not very graceful when you're somewhere in a tree. I think I picked it up reasonably quickly. One of the rivers I fish regularly is the Rother at Cowdray Estate. So I started that reasonably quickly after my first few casting lessons. The Rother is really wild, so it's not very manicured at all. So there are lots of trees, there are lots of overhanging branches. So I think I just learned it by fishing difficult areas. And I have to say, the first few times I went on the Rother, there was no chance of me catching a fish. And I thought, I thought it might even be impossible to actually catch fish there. But you evolve with that, you develop, you suddenly start to realize, what could work, how it could work. So it was very much learning by doing, I think. And I'm not the best caster in the world, but I do think I get my fly to the places where it should be reasonably okay.
That's the object of the exercise as well. And I think that's one of the things that there's so many things, isn't there, within fly fishing that we can go down these wormholes with. It might be tying flies, it might be the casting, it might be many other different things. But did you find with the casting that you were just continually practicing? Were you out on the grass? Were you out in the field? Were people asking you strange questions as you were casting away? Were you enjoying that aspect of it equally?
Yeah, so opposite my house is a big field. It's usually occupied by sheep. They are gone at the moment. So yeah, I regularly stood in the field practicing my casting. And that gets you so far, then you're at the river where you can't do a back cast and, everything changes instantly anyway. But I think what also helped me is on the Rother, I tend to be on my own. There aren't that many people in the syndicate. And when you have time, you're not under pressure. You can have a go at things. It doesn't matter if things go wrong. It doesn't matter if you hit the tree for the third time. And you just, yeah, I think it helps. It helps.
And that's a lovely mindset to be in, isn't it? And to say it doesn't matter, because we do it for fun, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it doesn't, when you're in the tree, it doesn't feel like fun. But yeah, definitely. We shouldn't forget that.
And so Gilly got you going. Have you had any other mentors along the way that have helped you on your fly fishing journey?
Yeah, numerous friends who were much more experienced fishers than I am, who took the time to take me out, take me on their rivers, show me what they are doing, show me different techniques. And I think that's a really, really important point of fishing as well. It is a wonderful community. And I've experienced it that everybody is keen to kind of share the knowledge they've acquired over the years. And it's really nice from a learning point of view, but it's also, you can forge fantastic friendships on a riverbank as well. So yeah, I lots of friends took me out, helped me along the way, showed me different things, and yeah, brilliant experience.
And it's lovely having people show you face to face, because we live in a wonderful world where we can pick up and garner information very, very quickly, can't we? That these days you could pretty much, and I know latterly when I was teaching fly casting, that you could easily sort of tell if somebody had been watching YouTube or whatever. Those shortcuts are there. Shortcut's not probably the right word, but the information is out there now, isn't it? That helps you move on your fishing exponentially.
Definitely. I mean, the internet, YouTube, all of that helps enormously. But I think what is even better, and that's where an aspect of the Grayling Society is quite important, is if you have almost that apprenticeship model of going out with someone who is really experienced. On a river they fished for decades, they know everything about the river. I think you can then in person learn more in an afternoon than by looking at YouTube videos for months, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, I'm 100% with you on that. And we'll come on to the Grayling Society shortly, but I wanted to ask you, because your route into discovering grayling, I guess, has been slightly different, but when did they sort of become all in, all encompassing is probably the wrong term, but a fish that you felt so strongly about? When did you realise, wow, these fish are absolutely extraordinary?
So actually, by losing a big grayling. So I was lucky enough to fish the River Test, and I had a few brownies. Funny enough, I also caught the minnow that day, and I had a big grayling on the hook. I fought it a bit. It came up to the surface, and I just saw this beautiful fin, and I got so nervous. And I thought, I absolutely want to net this fish, and then it pinged off. And I still remember that. I still think of this fish as well. So I just thought, this is such a beautiful fish. So I then desperately tried to catch a grayling, and it was almost like a conspiracy. So they absolutely did not want to get caught by me, which I think fueled the obsession a little bit at the beginning until I netted the first one, so then we got going again. And I just think it's a beautiful fish. It's a very charismatic fish. I don't know if you have had the experience of grayling doing really funny things. So for example, you can cast a nymph to them. You know they see it and they just move backwards with it. They just do these funny things. So I just think they have a great charisma as well. They have a sense of humor, definitely. And yeah, I think it's the most beautiful fish you can catch.
It's interesting, that routine, isn't it? And I've probably talked about this previously on the podcast, and I'm still haunted by a sizable grayling I caught on the Dove in Derbyshire that came off just at the end. And like you said, I got a good look at it and thought, oh, this is the one, this is the one. And then it went away. Why do you think it is that we always seem to remember the fish we didn't catch rather than, is it because we've actually touched the ones that we've landed and we've seen them and got that opportunity to have that short connection, or is it something else?
Yeah, it would be interesting to analyze that with a neuroscience to see what actually is going on in your brain whilst you are doing all of that. But when I described that, you have that constant hope. And I think it's almost at the peak where you almost have it in the net and it just pings off it. And I'm not sure what chemical processes that triggers in your brain, but it seems to be something that just sticks with you.
And here's
Just
yeah,
almost there, aren't you? You
yeah,
very nearly got it.
yeah. And I was kind of thinking that I was very fortunate in my first article for the magazine that people, if they've read it, I caught a huge grayling on the Froome with John Applin, and it was a big fish. And I sat down and said to him, I don't need to fish anymore. And I messaged Rich, who I work with, and just said, perhaps this is a bit of a sign. Whereas if you've lost a fish, you continue on with a determination, don't you? And sometimes it's funny also that I notice when one comes off, you flip the fly exactly to where you just hook. I don't know if that's some vain hope that it'll take it again, but it's funny that process again on a deeper level, how it can affect us as well.
Yeah, definitely. But actually, that could work with a grayling, couldn't it? If you have a shoal of grayling, it might not be the worst idea to cast straight back on where you've lost it. But yeah, I totally share the same experience.
Yeah, there is something very special about them. And it wasn't that long ago. I remember being told to knock them on the head if you caught them. And it's been an amazing turnaround in the popularity of the fish from, people understanding what they're about, the non-competing, they're extending the season. There's so many positives about them, isn't there?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's well and truly where the Grayling Society comes in. So the Grayling Society has done exceptional work to change mindsets and change awareness of grayling as a valued and respected game fish. And as you say, if you look back to the 19th, 20th century, they were considered a nuisance, a vermin fish, outcompeting trout, particularly here in the south, on the chalk streams. And they were fished out and culled by the thousands. So that's really a massive achievement of the Grayling Society to change that attitude. And I think nowadays grayling fishing becomes more and more popular. So many people after the trout season continue fish for grayling or start to fish for grayling or want to know more about grayling fishing because it gives them another opportunity to fish during the winter months. So yeah, that's definitely a really important aspect.
I probably mentioned it on here, but I remember a riverkeeper on the Itchen, Ron Holloway, wonderful man, told me a story when Frank Sawyer was mentoring him. And they went along to the Avon, where Frank was a riverkeeper, dug a trench, caught a load of grayling, threw them in the trench, and then covered it over. And it is amazing. And for me, the Grayling Society, I can tell you exactly where I became aware of it. I think it was on Paul Young's TV programme that he was fishing with the, again, late and great Bernard Cribbins. And on his fishing vest, he had a Grayling Society patch.
Yeah,
and that immediately made me oh, what's this?
Yeah.
Let's have a look at this. And so those things clearly do work on many levels with people. It triggered me down to go and learn a little bit more and see what was happening there. So it works, those things, of course, the social media world. But isn't it amazing that little things like that people, and I think it's probably, like you say, our hope or perhaps our slight obsessiveness about our pastime, that we're just not watching someone fish. I'm certainly drinking in every little detail of what they're using, the rod, the vest, and I saw that patch. So there we go. I don't know if they're still available. Yeah, but it works, definitely.
Yeah. Oh, how interesting. Yeah, no, and Frank Sawyer is his killer bug has the name killer bug because he used it to fish grayling out of the river, not knowing that it might not be the best idea to do that. So if we go back to the society, so this was a massive achievement of the society, and now we actually want to take it a step further, because if you look at grayling in a river ecosystem, they have also some particular characteristics which make them really important. They are much more sensitive to changes in pollution, changes in water temperature, sedimentation. So it makes them really an indicator species of overall river health. And I do think, as the chair of the Grayling Society, I want to strengthen the voice of the grayling for that very reason. So if we have healthy grayling populations, we tend to have healthy river systems, and I think that's really important. So it's almost like the canary in the coal mine.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly with that. And so we can move on to that now, as you've talked about the society a little bit. And as I said, recently you have become chair. Was this an easy decision to make, or did it take some thought to go through it? Was it something that you had to sit on for a bit and think about?
So I think I have a slight affection for volunteer-led non-for-profit organizations like the Grayling Society. I think they are very important. But I do think if you go back 30, 40 years, it was more common for people to know these organizations and to join these organizations and to participate in these volunteer-led initiatives. Whatever it is, it doesn't need to be the Grayling Society. It can be your local history society or horticultural society. And I think we've lost that a little bit. And I think it's a real shame, because there is such a vast amount of knowledge in these societies. If you look at the Grayling Society, for example, And I think we have to find a way back into that and find a way to disseminate this knowledge and share it across generations. Because what we ultimately want, for example, if you look at grayling fishing, is that the next generation and the next generation will also be out on the river, also have the knowledge to how to fish for grayling and the care for the fish, because then we can ensure that rivers are being cared for as well. And I think these organizations like the Grayling Society are very important for that. I personally work in a national membership organization, so I thought I do have the skill set to lead a society of that type. I do think I can hopefully do a good job and develop it into a into the future area. I think what I want to focus on is the three things the Grayling Society is best at. So it's obviously grayling fishing is part of it, but it also combines grayling fishing with community. So that's what I mean. You have such a font of knowledge in the society, and to share that with other generations, people who might not know all that much about grayling fishing, is really important. And obviously, grayling conservation. For me, grayling conservation is river conservation in general. And I do think all of these three aspects are really interesting. And so I don't think I've answered your question. No, it was not a difficult decision. I was actually really excited to do it. And I
You
still am.
you definitely are answered it perfectly. And how did it come about? Were you surprised pleasantly to be asked to take on the role?
I've applied for the role actually. So we had a vacancy. I saw what the society would expect from a chair in that role, and I thought I could do a good job. So I sent in my application, and I was obviously very pleasantly surprised that I got the role.
And that sounds fantastic, because just talking to you now, how tuned in you are. And I often sound here how we're shifting a little bit in fly fishing, that it's not just about the fish. It's becoming, community is a word that we use a lot within it, in however we want to look at that, but also the conservation side of it as well. And that's becoming a bigger part of it, I think, from when I first started fishing, that we are seeing these sorts of changes. And it seems to me as though you've dialed in and hit it exactly on the head of where something like this needs to be. And, you're relatively new into the role, but how are you enjoying it so far?
I love it. I think it's fantastic. I really, really enjoy it. I mean, if you can do something you're really passionate about, that's just always the best anyway. But I do think we are doing really good work as well. Um, we have the Grayling Society will always have some limitations by the mere fact that we are all volunteers doing these roles. So nobody is paid for it. The vast majority have a full-time job, and we just invest our time because we care for it. So that obviously is a limitation. And the same is if you look at the financial side. I would like to set up conservation projects and a small grant scheme so that we can support maybe angling trusts or fisheries with practical conservation activities. But we are limited in how we are doing that because we obviously have limited resources. So we have to be clever. We have to be really targeted to make sure that whatever we do actually furthers grayling conservation in a direct way. But there are some fantastic things which the society has started, which I would like to develop further. For example, we have the grayling catch return scheme on our website, directly on the landing page. So everybody in the country who fishes for grayling, when they come home from a day's fishing, they should log on to the grayling catch return scheme and fill out their catches, because that would give us the first building block for conservation work. So if we know what population trends are doing in the country for grayling, we get a better idea of where we have to focus practical conservation work, or where we have to focus advocacy for that matter, because we can show that there is a problem in certain areas. So with this data set, I want to develop that even further to what I call it the Grayling watch list. So I want to overlay it then with different data sets. So you could overlay it with, riverfly monitoring data. You can overlay it with pollution incidents, weather data, and so on. So then you hopefully get a clearer picture as to what is actually going on in these ecosystems. And with the grayling as an indicator species, we are absolutely best placed to try and develop this. And I hope that then gives us an even stronger voice for grayling also in river conservation advocacy, because I do think, government agencies, regulators should look at what the grayling are doing, should be aware of grayling, and should be alarmed if grayling populations are declining in certain areas.
I was going to ask you why should people join the society, but you've answered it absolutely beautifully already there. Have you found, because this is a volunteer role, and it strikes me your passion and love for the grayling and the society is coming across loud and clear at the moment, have you found that it has been an easy role to slip into, and has it been more to take on than you thought, exactly what you thought it would be, or actually it's been a real seamless, easy transition for you into this role?
So it's definitely, it is probably as much work as you want it to be, but I'm really passionate for it. I want to do a good job, so I do invest a lot of time in it. And I have no problem with that. I think it's fantastic. It obviously is not everything is easy. So I do think volunteer-led organizations like the Grayling Society are not in the easiest position in general. If you look at the membership of the Grayling Society, it is aging. I don't want to say we reach a cliff edge, but we need to recruit younger generations into the society. And that's not necessarily the easiest task, because nowadays you are competing with so many different alternatives. As you said at the beginning of the podcast, you're competing with internet resources. Why would a young angler join the Grayling Society when they can learn everything on YouTube? People have very busy lives, so I think to get membership going was probably easier a few decades ago. But I do think that's also because younger generations don't necessarily know about these societies anymore and don't immediately see the benefit. So for me, that means we need to educate them. We need to show them how it all works, what the benefits are, why it is important, why it is beneficial for them as anglers to be involved in a community like that, what they can learn, and so on. So I think it's definitely a challenging role, but I absolutely have accepted the challenge, and I will give it my all.
Absolutely brilliant. How can people join? So I'm hoping people are listening today and thinking, actually, I'm buying in 100% to what Marnie's saying about the society. And particularly, I think the key thing for me is that everyone's volunteering for this, so they're not getting paid for it. And so every little one membership makes a difference, right?
100%. So every membership counts. An adult membership in the Grayling Society is only 28 quid. So I always think that's a few beers in a pub, and you get a year's membership for it. If you're under 18, you can join for free. And I think I would urge all young anglers to join, because they will benefit, from the knowledge that the society can offer. If you're older than 70, it's 22 quid a year. So it's absolutely, completely affordable. And the more members we have, the more we can do for grayling conservation, the more we can do to promote awareness of grayling angling, the more we can do in terms of events. People are quite keen to get take part in events where they have, practical benefits in terms of fishing tips and so on. But we can only do that if we have sufficient members supporting the organization.
And also for that membership, there's a newsletter journals thing that comes along with it too, right?
Yeah, twice a year you get our journal, so you have a lot of information in there. Part of it is focused on grayling ecology, grayling conservation, but there is also a lot of information about grayling angling, techniques, fly tying, and so on. You also have membership benefits, so we do have discounts with different retailers and some fly fishing suppliers. So there are these benefits too, but don't just do it for the benefit. Do it for grayling awareness, grayling conservation, and it's 28 quid. If you buy a fishing rod at Farlow's with the discount, you have it treble back in no time.
Perfect pitch. Where do people sign up?
Very simple. So they can go on the website, which is www.graylingsociety.net. Let me just check. Yeah, it's the Grayling Society, not the Grayling Society. And on the landing page, you have two very important buttons. One is to join the society, so just join up. The other one is catch return. So when you've been out fishing, please fill out our catch return. And just on that, I want to highlight, by the way, even if you don't catch a grayling, go and fill it out. Because, zero catches are just as important in terms of data than the actual catch, because it will tell us something. People don't have to give us their name, so they can use a nickname for the catch return if they think they didn't do well. But it's really important for us.
Well, there we have it. We have the website. So I really do hope that you will give it a look and perhaps consider signing up as well. It would be fantastic if you could do that. You strike me as somebody who's incredibly well organised. And although you're relatively new into the role at the moment, where would you like to see the society in, say, 5 years' time?
So in 5 years' time, I'm very ambitious. I want to at least double the membership, first of all. I do want to have a proper small grant scheme up and running so that we can regularly contribute and collaborate with other organizations on practical conservation projects. I do want to have that grayling watch list I described to you set up. So what that means is I want to fill certain gaps in the evidence base, because the more evidence we've got, the better arguments we have. And I want to then use that for advocacy for grayling conservation and river conservation in general. So I think these are the three main elements that I want to achieve in the next 5 years. Within that, I'd like to see more younger people join the Grayling Society, more females joining the Grayling Society. I think a lot of people just don't know that it exists yet. And get that diversity going, because if we want to conserve grayling in the future, we need the young people involved now, because they will then be the people 40, 50 years down the line who are doing what we are doing today.
We've touched on it a little bit, but it's a very difficult thing to sidestep. And you mentioned the canary in the coal mine, the pollution issues. As anglers, do you think we should be a little bit more vocal, comparable? Let's think about surfers, for example. Do you think we could be doing more? We should be doing more?
Yeah, we can always do more. I mean, we have some very vocal, fantastic advocates from the angling community. I mean, our president is Fergal Sharkey, so he is doing a fantastic job in terms of river conservation advocacy. But yeah, of course we have to do more. It's a very frustrating situation. There are lots of pressures on rivers. I do think people have to start to understand better again that rivers are our lifelines, and they've always have been, and we have to look after them. And what that means is that we absolutely need to invest in infrastructure. So if you look at sewage pollution, we need to invest in infrastructure. It's just not acceptable that we have dual sewage systems, that we don't have stormwater storages, that we don't have enough reservoirs. So all of that is a real priority, and it's an investment. It's not. I know that there are a lot of competing interests when it comes to public funds, but this is not. It's not spending. It is investing in infrastructure. There is a difference, in my opinion. But it's the same with. You also have a lot of problems with agriculture, for example. So we need to, and there are some really difficult problems because we also need food security. We need to have a farming community that is working efficiently and proactively, but we need to help them achieve that in a way that doesn't pollute our rivers. So there's so many different areas where we have to get better, even down to granular things. So for example, the spot on flea treatments we use on our dogs. I have got 4 dogs. I won't use any of these products because I know they can be harmful if they go in the river. Many people simply don't know and have never been told. So there are so many areas where we have to invest work, and we don't have an awful lot of time. So when you say, should we do more? Yeah, probably we should all try and do more. And it can be small things. If you think of grey water, if you are watering your garden with mains water, maybe you can consider having a rain butt somewhere so that you can collect your own grey water and water it that way. So it can also be small things, but there are obviously some real big ticket items which are not easily fixed, but they need to be fixed now.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm still a big believer in word of mouth. And if you're telling members of your family these sorts of things, we've done the same with salmon farms and other things as well, isn't it? That if we can just say, oh, did you know, or have you thought about, or are you aware of, that can feed out because, and I call people who don't fish civilians, but they're not engaged in quite the same way that we are they? That we're looking at it, we're aware of it, but they're focused on so many other things as well. And just a gentle comment here or there really can help, can't it?
Yeah, definitely. And I do think, certain aspects of river pollution are completely obscure to people who haven't been exposed to it. And I also believe in collaboration, I have to say. So if you look at agriculture and farming, it's very easy to try to polarize an argument and make it us and them. Actually, in politics in general, that's the case at the moment. But I actually do think we all have rivers is a common goal. Nobody can argue against it. We all need clean rivers. So I actually think there is it should be a unifying element there as well. And hopefully we can get everybody in a mindset that we are working towards the same goal.
Fantastic. Well, to anyone listening, there's the story, there's the pitch. You fish for grayling. Do you want to help grayling? Consider it. So, in my humble opinion, please consider signing up. It would be wonderful if we can help these amazing fish that, as we've talked about, tell us about the state of the water. They extend our season. They do so much for us. Let's do a little bit for them in return. So I hope you'll consider that. But I wanted to come back to fishing a little bit now and say, how would you describe yourself as an angler?
That is a good question. I think I'm probably quite ambitious and driven. So I do want to catch a fish. I know some people say, oh, and I say that too. It's just lovely to be on a river. That is absolutely true. It's particularly true when you haven't caught a fish and you say it afterwards. But I do want to catch them. And I do think I like that it's almost that chase. So, for example, when you look at sight fishing, for me, that's the best part. What can I do in terms of my casting, the fly I use to actually convince that fish to take it. So I think that interaction for me is really important.
And I've sort of grabbed you away from the river to chat this morning, and you've been down first thing this morning, you're going back there. For you, is a fishing day, or do you grab a few hours of when you think it might be good prime time or it fits with your diary?
So where I go this afternoon on the Itchen, I tend to do a morning session and an evening session, and during the day I'm here, look after my dogs, do some other things I have to do. What I do very often on the Rother is I go out very early in the morning, 4:30. I'm there at 5. I fish for 2 hours. I come back and then I start work. And it's actually kind of invigorating. But I also do very extensive sessions. So I occasionally go sea trout fishing with a very good friend of mine. So we spend the whole night on the riverbank and it's absolutely fantastic. So it's varied. I do like to go out 2 or 3 times a week at least. And I'm in the very, very lucky position that I can just go and fish, within 25 minutes from my house. And it's the best way to start a day and it's the best way to end the day. So I try to go out as much as I can.
And what about when it comes to the fishing? Are you somebody who likes to fish with somebody, or do you like to fish alone?
I do fish alone a lot and I enjoy that. I do think it is, when we talked at the beginning where you have that reset moment where it just takes something, it just takes some of the heaviness of everyday life away. And I think I experience that most when I'm on my own on a river. But I also have some fantastic mates and we have such a great time fishing together, having a banter, winding each other up. And this is also a really important part of fishing in the fishing community.
And you said winding each other up. Does that mean that you'll take it in turns, you'll share a rod? It's not one of those sort of, well, I'm going to fish up here, you're going to fish down there, and I'll see you at lunchtime sort of thing. You share the experience together.
No, we probably tend to have a rod each and fish a little bit apart, but there's still plenty of opportunity to wind one another up or criticize one another or whatever.
Constructive criticism, right?
Yeah, or just making fun of one another.
Yeah.
You have to learn not to take yourself too seriously when fishing as well. It's particularly important when you cast in trees.
Exactly. And everyone gets caught in trees, right?
Well, yeah, I assume so. I hope so.
Well,
I hope it's not just me.
Yeah, my hand's in the air, so absolutely 100% with that. Do you tie flies then? Is that part of this other wormhole that you can disappear down? Do you
Yes,
enjoy doing that?
yes, I do tie flies. And I think it's even better to catch fish on your own flies. Not all of the flies I use I tied myself, but I do.
And do you enjoy that aspect of it as well? Is that something that you'll do over winter, coming into winter, or it's just fly box is getting a bit low, it needs topping up?
Yeah, I tend to top up more than being very strategic about it. But again, it's kind of an evening activity where you can wind down. It's meditative. You have to be really focused on something. I fish a lot of very, very small flies, so you really have to, it's not it's fiddly. You can't think of anything else whilst you're doing it. And again, Grayling Society, we have some absolute fantastic people in terms of fly tying. So the secretary of the Grayling Society Holland is Hans van Klinken, who is a master of fly tying. So I occasionally, when I'm brave enough, I send him a cling camera I just tied. And he's always very kind and he says things like, oh, I couldn't have done that better myself. And I think, yeah, of course.
Fantastic. And tell me about your fly boxes, because I spent yesterday, I'm off to Italy shortly, and I tried my utmost to tidy my fly boxes a little bit, make them look a little bit smarter so that I can find a fly in that special moment. But are you somebody who has rows of flies beautifully lined up together in ascending or descending sizes, or is it a little bit more chaotic?
It's reasonably messy, I have to say. It's yeah, there is an underlying system, so you can still see the system, but I do change flies a lot as well. So after a day's fishing, it's all a little bit muddled up, and very often I can't be bothered to put it back in order. I do find what I need though, usually, so it's fine, I think.
Excellent. I made a big detour to fish a stream in Montana once. It was the Big Hole in Wisdom, and we were staying in Missoula, and it was a hell of a drive. But it was one of the last outposts, or is one of the outposts of fluvial grayling in the state. And I managed to catch some, which was amazing. I think it was on a clinkhammer caddis of some sort, but that's by the by. But have you made big detours? And you said, you fished 11 different streams. Have you made big detours to fish somewhere with the chance of casting a fly and perhaps catching grayling?
So I try to fish as much as I can. So when I do travel, it was mainly UK based travel though. I do try and see if there is a fishing opportunity I can add on. So I fished in Wales quite a bit because I traveled there regularly. Um, but I do want to also do some overseas travel to go fishing in places I haven't fished before. I'm quite keen to go to Scandinavia to fish for some nice big grayling up there. And I do have this idea in my head to go out there, camp somewhere, and just live quite wild for a few days whilst catching grayling. So that's kind of one of my dreams.
You should speak to Hans about where he heads. He goes right out into the wilderness there, and a guest we've had on the podcast as well lives in Lapland, and it sounds extraordinary out there. Would that be something that's of interest?
Absolutely. And I don't want to say too much yet, but there might be an opportunity for members of the Grayling Society to get some discounts in relation to traveling up there and fishing there. It's not, it's I can't confirm it yet, but we are working towards it.
Well, there's another good reason to join as well, and yeah, it sounds absolutely extraordinary there. Is there anywhere further? Have you, I talk a lot, and we have him in the magazine, Pete Cockle, and his uh, crusade for that huge grayling. Places like that, are they of interest to you? Is there weird and wonderful places that grayling may live of interest to you as well? Is there anywhere else globally that you'd be interested in trying to visit?
There's definitely interest there, but it's not my primary focus. It's also not my primary focus to fish exceptionally big fish, by the way. So I do have just as much pleasure from fishing a small brownie, which looks absolutely pretty, or a small grayling. So I'm not necessarily after specimens. So obviously, yes, there are lots of places where I think that looks fantastic. I want to go fishing there, but it's usually not necessarily cheap. So it doesn't. It's not my main driver, if that makes sense.
It does, absolutely. And I was just kind of thinking while we were talking as well that we've talked about everything in the sense of grayling, but of course you just mentioned the brownie there. And do they vie at the top of your list, or do the grayling edge it for you each time as a favourite species?
I fish for grayling and trout predominantly. I would say, and I love both, absolutely love both. Love sea trout fishing. For some reason in my heart, I'd say grayling are still my favorite. Um, I occasionally catch other fish on the Rother, for example. The Rother is full of chub, so occasionally you get a really nice chub on your fly. But yeah, there's something Grayling. They've got me.
Yeah, fair comment. Can't disagree with that. Here's the really tricky question. You're getting up super early. You're heading down perhaps to the Rother then to go fish. You get in the car. You put some music on. What is the song that will help set the tone for that day?
I would say it depends on the day. Sometimes it's just radio, people talking about everyday life, so then you can escape from that. What I listen to regularly when I go fishing is Dire Straits, because I just really like the music. If I have to pick one particular song, I would probably say Tunnel of Love. Wonderful story. Little bit magical, little bit elusive in terms of what happens in the story. So it has a connection to fishing there.
Nice, like that one a lot. I often worry myself about that. I'm so deeply entrenched in fishing that I worry sometimes that I might be a little one-dimensional. I do have interests the way that I keep private from fishing. But is there something else? You mentioned dogs, you mentioned horses. Is there something else that you have that when you can step away from your life as well as fishing that has a great interest for you?
Yeah, I mean there isn't all that much time left, I have to say, after, if you take work, Grayling Society, fishing, there isn't all that much time left. I do have 4 dogs. I like to spend time with them. I like to walk them. I like to go into woods. So I think woodland has also, similar to rivers, woodland is also a very nice area to be in. I do have some chickens in the garden, so I look after them, which means I can do absolutely no housework anymore because I simply don't have time. But yeah, time is a problem, and I do have to say I try to go fishing as much as I can.
Correct answer. The dogs, do they get to go fishing with you at any stage?
No, I do take them in rivers sometimes, but more for their pleasure. So there is absolutely no way you can fish with any of my dogs near you. They are 4 spaniels. They will be in the river. They will be very raucous. No chance of any fish being anywhere near them.
Yeah, got you there. Got you. Well, we're just coming up an hour now, and I just wondered, Marnie, if you could share with people socials, either personal and or Grayling Society, because I think people listening will want to try and connect with you and the society as well. So can you let us know a little bit about how people can connect with you, please?
Absolutely. So website I've mentioned already, graylingsociety.net. And on there you have the Facebook and Instagram button. So Facebook is the Grayling Society. And Instagram, let me just double check to make sure I'm absolutely correct on that, is just Grayling Society. You will find it. It's not difficult to find. Please join the social media channels because I'm trying to update you all on what's going on as well. I'm trying to remind people that we have things like a catch return because a lot of people don't know. And also, if you catch some lovely fish, please send them to us. We are very keen to see what you're catching during the season. My personal Instagram is far less interesting. I think it's just Marnie Lovejoy. Feel free to follow it too.
Fantastic. And that's a great idea, isn't it? Tagging Grayling. Perhaps we can get people doing that, tagging Grayling Society when they catch a nice fish as well, or a fish that they're really proud of, happy with, or is memorable for whatever reason. So there is something cool to do to help, even if you perhaps feel that you don't want to join. I hope I hope you do, but at least be part of it in some way, shape or form. So perhaps we can get a little bit of a thing going here. It would be really cool if we could. Marnie, it's been really inspirational speaking with you this morning. I'm so sorry to have grabbed you off the river, but I would like to say a massive thank you. I hope people, like I say, will consider joining the society, and like I say, the volunteer thing is so compelling, and I hope that 28 quid, like you say, will go a long way in helping what these good people are doing. So Marnie, I'd like to say a huge thank you for being a guest on the podcast today. It's been an absolute pleasure to speak with you.
Thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure on my part. Thank you.
Well, everyone, this has been another episode of the podcast. I hope you've enjoyed this one as much as me. As ever, there's never going to be any charge for these. I just love talking to people like Marnie, as we have done today, spreading the word a little bit, and perhaps we can do some good and help these fish that we enjoy fishing for on a wider basis as well. So I'd like to say a huge thank you for listening. There'll be plenty more episodes coming very, very soon. Thank you so much for listening.
Thanks for listening to the Fly Culture podcast, brought to you in association with the Voice of Game Angling, Trout and Salmon, where Pete is the editor.